This is Eric Vierthaler of Sit Down by the Fire. I'm here with my next special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name's Tristin Vick, and I'm a published author. I was traditionally published in 2014 by Permuted Press. I wrote a zombie series called Bitten. Um, and then I went into indie publishing after that, because you learn really quickly the publishing world loves to take all the royalties, and you barely make anything. So I started the indie route, and then when COVID hit in 2019, I wanted to write my first comic series, and so I wrote a comic book. Um, and it did really well. We ran a Kickstarter. It ended up making like $36,000 and in 1 month. And so I ran another one. It did just as well. I ran a couple more. I've run 7 Kickstarters so far, and they've all been successful for my comic book stuff. I've been writing multiple series. My first series I wrote is called Daughter of Wolves. It's basically Little Red Riding Hood with a steampunk vibe. My concept was, what if she got her arm bitten off? She turns into a werewolf herself. She gets like a bionic gauntlet arm, and then I wanted it to be like a big, long epic, like Lord of the Rings.
Right.
So she becomes a monster hunter, and then she's also a werewolf, but she's a shifter, so she can control her stages. So she can be like full on freaked out werewolf, or she can be half and half, like the Japanese fox girl with ears type thing, or she can be completely human. And then she makes a band of heroes and goes off questing, and it's got a lot of stuff in it, but that's my fantasy. Right after that, I did a sci-fi series called Alicia Carter and Robot. And that series did extremely well. It made me about $64,000, and it has sold over 10,000 copies. And she's a black heroine. She's mixed race, but I modeled her off of Alicia Keys. But but she's basically a space thief, and she crash lands on this world and has amnesia and meets a robot, and then she hotwires it, hijacks the robot because she steals things. Bounty hunters land and are chasing her, and hijinks ensue. It's got comedic content in it, but it's basically space adventure, space fantasy. And then after that, I started a series. These are all series that I've been starting over the last 3 or 4 years, and my latest series that I did myself was called The Profane, and it's about a female detective who's also happens to be a vampire.
Oh wow. So yeah, and I mean, but yeah, I mean, definitely huge congrats to you, like for just having success after success. Like, that is so awesome, dude.
Yeah, I was actually shocked that the ideas I was putting out were resonating so well with fans and readers, because my novels haven't really sold that well, but a couple of them have done decently, and then I wrote a cosmic horror in the vein of H.P. Lovecraft, and I wrote it's an anthology series, and it has a sequel. So the first book is called Dark Forces of Nature, and it's got 12 short stories, and they're all just like, if you like Black Mirror or classic Twilight Zone stuff, Electric Estate, things like of that nature, then this series will probably resonate. But yeah, they're just little shorts. Each one's about 15 to 20 pages, and they're just they're kind of horror centered, or they have a dystopian vibe, and then they end in a forlorn way, not like an upbeat or happy ending. It's kind of open ended and kind of abysmal. And then I did a sequel to that, where instead of 12 short stories, I did 10 short stories and then a novella. And the novella is called 1986 Lords of Summer. And it's just basically about some children who are transitioning from middle school to high school. They want to spend their last summer together. They have a tree fort in the woods. They go to it. There's a meteor strike that night. it's nearby. They want to check it out. They go check it out, and something has crawled out of the crater, and then they see the high school kids up on look or make out point, and the cars start getting jostled around, and they hear screaming and stuff, and so they know there's a monster. And then they flee back into the woods, and then something's stalking them in the woods, and they have to get back to the tree fort and make a last stand. And it's more upbeat. It's probably the lightest of that whole series, but I also leave it open ended. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in those books, I think, and they have some pretty decent reviews on Amazon and Goodreads and whatnot. But
Awesome.
again, they're not big earners, but I just have fun writing in that genre, and I'll just keep doing it because I love it. So
Yeah, and then with all that being said, do you personally feel like that because that you chose to have it be open ended? Do you feel like that did help to contribute it, like to helping it to become the success that it has?
I just think it's a stylistic choice. I don't think there's people who like that. There's people who don't like that type of style of open-endedness. But I only do it with the horror short stories. With my novels and stuff, I tend to keep them pretty tight. I like to plot things out really tightly. I wrote a novel series called Gladiatrix of the Galaxy. It's just a fun homage to the classic pulp sci-fi, like John Carter of Mars and Northwest Smith and all the early sci-fi stuff. And it was it's 6 books, and they're all over 500 pages. So they just kept getting bigger and bigger. And it's just epic about a woman, a Earth woman who gets abducted by aliens, sold to slavers, who then hand her over to the gladiator syndicate, and then she has to fight in gladiatorial arenas against other aliens throughout the galaxy. Originally, it was a pitch to Heavy Metal magazine, and my artist friend and I we worked up like a 7-page sample pitch to the Heavy Metal, and then Heavy Metal folded at that time that we were pitching it, and the magazine was no more for a long time. I mean, it's coming back now. They just ran a Kickstarter to reboot themselves, but needless to say, it never went anywhere. And then I was like, but I kind of like this character. I want to do something with her. And then I kind of was interested in chainmail bikini, the cheesecake style, Conan the Barbarian and Red Sonja type stuff. People prancing around in their chainmail, and I wanted to tell a story, but again, I wanted to go epic with it, and so I thought space opera works. So put this gladiator woman into like a space, like a Star Wars-esque space situation, and then just go from there. And it's just got everything. I just threw everything I ever liked or wanted about the genre into it. And again, it has a very it has cosmic horror elements to it here and there, little touches. Like my main villain is the King in Yellow, Hastur, from H.P. Lovecraft's Pantheon. And Hastur is very famous because the King in Yellow appears in many different. They were kind of all the pulp writers of the day were sharing this character, even though H.P. Lovecraft created him. But yeah, he shows up in a lot of work. He shows up in C.L. Moore's work. Shows up in a lot of the early writers. But yeah, it's just fun to use that element. So he's like this cosmic being, like God level, and doing terrible things. And so she has to, again, the common theme in my stuff is like building friendships, building bonds, creating little teams of close friends, adventurers, and then going forth and having to face off with a greater evil. That's mainly what I do in my like big novels, big epics and stuff, and comic books. With the short stories, I tend to keep it more isolated because that works better for horror. So it's usually 1 or 2 characters, or it's like a team of Marines getting picked off one by one until there's only one left. It's always a dwindling situation versus like this coming together type thing. So there's definitely different genres and styles I like to play in. I guess I'd consider myself multi-genre author because I kind of just crisscross my genres, mix and match whatever works. I like to throw it all together and make something new out of it. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I do.
And yeah, and yeah, and you know, a lot of people I know who are a part of the industry of filmmaking, a lot of them like have told me that the reason why that they mix genres, for an example, there are so many war movies out there where where at this point you really would have to do something different with it, and so then that's why that's why that when I think Pan's Labyrinth was made, that was why that was why that they said, okay, how about we mix war in with fantasy? Is
Hmm.
because that you know I personally can't really name any other war movies mixed in with fantasy off the top of my head other than that one. And so yeah, and so yeah, I definitely feel like it's a really really good way to go about it, like to mix up the genres. Is because people get tired of seeing the same thing over and over again, especially after so long.
Yeah, yeah. There's a horror. It's like a I can't remember the name of it. It was a lower budget film, but it was soldiers during World War II, and they find like a secret bunker, and there's like zombies or something in it, and they have to fight zombie Nazis. It was just a cheesy movie. I don't even remember the title, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, and I mean, now that you mentioned the title, it definitely does sound intriguing because, yeah, I mean, Nazis, zombies, and all that. I mean, yeah, I mean, you normally want to associate one with the other. And, and people also said the same thing when Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, well, like with the whole thing about aliens.
Yeah, yeah, and because that's again the Indiana Jones is a pulp hero, like a pulp fiction character, and so he was also supposed to be an anthology style character, and so all the stories were supposed to like shift genres. That was the original plan for him, and so George Lucas kind of did that. Crystal Skull wasn't really well received when it came out, but going back, I rewatched it maybe a couple months ago, and I actually liked it a lot better than the newest one. So I guess there's something to say that for that genre bending that seems to work. And I
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah.
go sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But yeah, I totally didn't mean to cut. But yeah, I totally didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, that's okay.
But yeah, and so anyways, um, what may work for one person, it may not work for someone else, and vice versa. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you really truly just can't please everybody.
Yeah, I just recently watched Sinners, uh, Coleridge's new film, and it's really amazing. And the thing
Okay.
that yeah, and it's also genre bending because it's mixing like period piece with vampire lore with like a musical, and I wasn't expecting the musical element to it. You know?
I wasn't either. I was not expecting that, and I mean, to be fair, when I went to go see it, I actually had no idea that it was a vampire movie. I was like, hey, why not? I can go see it. Like, I didn't have a clue anything about it. All that I knew is that I had Michael B. Jordan, and I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I was like, hey, he's a pretty good actor, so why not? And yeah, and what I've been saying, it pretty much is the modern day From Dusk Until Dawn.
Hmm. Yeah, it was really good. I I ended up buying it just because a lot of the movies I want to watch I end up buying digital first, and then if I really love it, then I'll buy a physical version of it. And I think this is one of the ones that I'm definitely going to get a physical version of when it comes out.
So about that, so the whole debate about physical media versus digital media both have their pros and cons, And now, film definitely, has that whole debate about, whether to own a DVD or Blu-ray or 4K, whichever, or versus streaming on Tubi, Netflix, or whichever. It seems to me that, like the comic books, and also even graphic novels, even are having to deal with that transition as well. And so yeah, and then as far as what you're doing, like with comic books and graphic novels, what are your thoughts on all that?
Um, with comic books, it's a little different. Um, I just ran a campaign with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle and Street Fighter artist Ariel Medell, and it was his like dream project, and we had a hard time getting the funding for it as the Kickstarter was running because everyone was buying digital, and I think it might just be a sign of the times economically. A lot of people couldn't afford the physical editions because we ended up getting 277 backers, and that all my other campaigns have been roughly the same amount of backers and have done much better in terms of in terms of the earnings that we'd get. It should have done double what it did. We made $7,000, so we met our goal and are able to produce it and everything. But we were aiming for like $18,000-$20,000, and by the numbers of backers, it should have made that. But we couldn't figure out what was going on because we kept getting sales, but it just kept just going up incrementally, and
Huh.
people were buying only digital copies, which are much cheaper than for like indie comics. To produce them is very expensive. Like one 26-page comic book costs about $10,000 to produce in full color.
Whoa, I had
Um,
no idea that it was that expensive.
yeah, they're very expensive. So if you don't make near 10,000, it's might be a loss versus a gain. However, we always offer digital copies because if you buy a physical copy, you just get the digital copy free. But nobody was buying the physical copies. Well, hardly anybody, I should say, was buying. And so as we were tracking it and watching the numbers, we realized people just couldn't afford the physical copies because indie comics cost about $30, anywhere from $25 to $30 for one comic book, versus four or $5 what regular comics are these days. But that's because you don't, when you're printing small print runs for like maybe 500 to 1,000 print copies, you don't actually start getting discounts on the print or the paper until you go over 2,000 copies. So you have to. It's one of these weird areas where the business side of it, the supply and demand, you have to go over a certain quota before you can get any savings on it. So you'd have to print over in order to make them cheap, like Marvel or DC Comics, which are running between $3 to $5 an issue. You'd have to print over 20,000 or no, not 20, about 10,000 copies to get the discounts from the printers. But when you're printing low print runs, you can't get those discounts, so you have to charge full price of what the materials cost. So we have to charge, $25 to $30 per issue, and it's weird to watch the algorithm kind of track it and everything. But what I found out was there's a split in readership. There's readers who buy it just to read the story and look at the art, and there's collectors who like to. You have different types of covers, alternate covers and whatnot, and they don't care so much about the story. They like to collect the art of the different covers, and they'll buy every single cover. They just won't probably read the book.
Right.
And so the collectors, there's like this divide, and I found out that readers tend to buy digital more than collectors because they just want to read the story as fast as possible and get on to the next one. And the collectors will always buy physical because they want to have it, they want to slab it, they want to put it on their wall or in their collection, And so running these campaigns, one of the things that I've been trying to do is balance the campaigns so that it kind of caters to both demographics.
Hmm.
And so digital is important because that's what the readers will buy mostly. And but having physical is also important because that's what the collectors will buy. And so right now I'm running about 56% of readership, and then about 44% are collectors, and so it's almost an even split. So yeah, I like to produce both, and I think probably with film or even music, it's probably the same way. There's probably a split of people who just like to listen to everything, and so they just get a whole bunch of downloads and listen on their iPods.
Hmm.
And then you have people who are buying vinyl and having record collections. So I think it's the same with comic books or anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword. It's because I mean, granted, it does suck that there are people not buying physical copies, but at the same time, I do understand why people are not doing it. It simply is because at the end of the day, people are on budgets, and people also like to save money too. So.
Yeah. And also, like in my case, I have a huge Blu-ray collection. I lived in Japan for 20 years, and after my divorce, I came back to the States. I had to leave it all there, and so I wasn't going to rebuy all the physical because it was just too expensive. So I started buying digital, and I just rebuilt my entire library digitally, and spent a couple thousand doing it that way. But it was cheaper than buying physical because I already own them, but I just don't have access to them. So I rebought all digital just so I could have the movies again and just watch them anytime.
Hmm.
So then it got me more into digital. But now I like to buy steel books of anything that I really, really love. And if there's a steel book of it, I'll just snatch it up.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah. And so yeah, and so I, I guess I'm just curious now. And so what exactly was it like that made you decide that you wanted to go on this, you know, like to go on this path?
Oh, for writing or just the genres I write in, like the specific
Uh,
content.
yeah, like like with like just your whole path of like writing and all that. So yeah.
Um, okay, so uh, well, originally I wanted to do graphic design out of high school, and I applied to a couple of graphic design schools, didn't get in, so I went to my state college. I did graphic design I graduated from MSU, Montana State University. So I did a year of a graphic design course there. Um, didn't really think it was up to par. It was like we were doing basic stuff, and I was like, I wanted to learn advanced Photoshop techniques and stuff like that. And they were just starting to teach people how to use Photoshop. And I was like, no, if you come into college not knowing it, you should probably go find something else. But it was just so slow and so like not really what I was looking for. So I switched to English Lit because I wanted to stay in the realm of storytelling. Because originally I was going to do comic book art myself. Because my dream was to be a comic book artist. I'm a pretty decent artist, but I'm not maybe pro level. But I switched over to that, and then one of the things was you had to for a humanities degree you have to get a language. You have to have language credits, and at the time they were only offering Hebrew, Aramaic, and Japanese. And I was looking at it going, this was right after 9/11, mind you. So
Boy.
it's those Middle Eastern languages maybe aren't the best ones to learn. And so I was like, okay, Japanese it is. And plus I was into anime and manga and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll study Japanese. And I took 2 semesters of it and was really struggling. I was like, I don't get this at all. And I like to think of myself as pretty smart. So I was like challenging myself to actually learn it, not just take a few credits. So I looked into the exchange program and found out MSU has a sister school in Kumamoto City in Japan. And so I applied and I got accepted. And so then I went and I did a year abroad in 2004. And that's when I met my future wife and now ex-wife.
I'm
But
sorry.
oh no, we were married 17 years. It was a pretty good marriage. It's just things happen and we couldn't stay together. And I wanted to come back to the States and she wanted to stay there, and just stuff like that. So but yeah, so I forgot what was the question. Oh, why I got onto the writing gig.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and then I came back and I was like, well, what do I want to do with my future? And I wanted a job. I wanted to keep telling stories, but I also wanted a job that I could sustain myself on. So I applied for JET program, went back to Japan, and I was a English teacher in Japan for about 16, 15 years. And while I worked at English schools, in my downtime, I would write. And yeah, so that's kind of what just kept me going as a writer. And then in about 2014, I published my first novel, and it caught the eye of an editor at Permuted Press, and they were like, can you write something else other than that? This is a quirky, interesting story. I wrote a story about a paranormal scarecrow that comes to life and joins the LAPD, and because why not?
Right.
and he's quirky, and his partner is like a Spitfire cop, and she's always out to just get the bad guys and all that, and bends the rules a little bit too often, and he's kind of like her moral conscience. And then you're getting towards the end of it, and you realize that maybe she's hallucinating this scarecrow figure. Maybe something's wrong with her mentally. But I also left that open-ended. Like, it's up to the reader to decide whether they think the cop is completely crazy and she's hallucinating this person, or this person's actually there and real and tangible. And the editor really liked it, but at the time, zombies were on the rise. Walking Dead, I think season 1 had just come out at that time, and it was doing decent. And there's another writer, Tufel. He writes the zombie Fallout series, and he was doing really well. And so somebody said, "Could you write a zombie series?" And I was like, I'm not sure. I've never written horror or in that genre before. So I went and I binged like about a dozen zombie films, classics, and all the way to modern films. And I kind of got a feel for the lingo and like what the basic, I guess, tropes are of the whole zombie genre. And then I went and wrote Bitten, and then they liked it enough, and they ordered a 5-book series. I only got the first 2 ever published. The rest never got made because they weren't selling like they wanted to, and they were selling in the mid like 1,000, 2,000 copies, and they wanted like big earners for a popular genre. But as I've studied genres, I've learned that zombie genre is not an evergreen genre, but vampires and werewolves are. So it's like. Well, that's something that I had to be very specific on when I started picking comic book stories. Like, what are the evergreen properties? What are going to stay popular all the time in like evergreens, and also earn money all the time, like evergreens being green all the time. So you just have to start studying genres, and one of the best ways to do that is just track on Amazon what the best sellers are over the course of a period of, a few years, and see what stays in the top 10 all the time. And then you go, okay, it's probably something like that. And zombies do not ever stay in the top 10 of anything. So they ebb and flow. They're popular for a while, and then they die out, and then they come back. And but yeah, like vampires are always popular. So that's why when I started doing comic books, I was like, well, what are things that are always popular that will appeal for the widest maybe group of readership, and also for the longest time it'll stay in vogue. And so, yeah, I'm very selective when I'm thinking about my stories. And I don't necessarily wrap the story around the concept of what's going to be popular. I just have a lot of ideas and I go, oh, this will fit with this idea or this will fit with this idea. And then I'm like, let's run with it, you know?
And yeah, and you know, thing about and the thing about business is that you know you have got to keep up with the times, you have got to keep up with the trends, because if you don't, you're more than likely are going to fail. And so yeah, and I mean you are right. Like you know, zombies, the you know like the trend will come and go. I mean, I don't really hear people talking about the Walking Dead anymore. So it seems to me, at least, I can't say for certain, but it seems to me like the zombies like have lost the popularity. I mean, of course, zombies are popular still, but it just seems to me at least that they're not as popular as they once were, like back in like 2010
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. And yeah, but I'm pretty sure that that trend like probably will come back. And so and then and and so yeah, I mean so yeah, and I mean like the cool thing like about you doing indie comics is that you know is that there actually have been indie comics like that have went from indie comics like to say like something that has like a big budget like and it gets turned into like a mainstream Hollywood movie like such as Kick Ass, and especially in Kick Ass 2, like when they got Jim Carrey in it, and yeah, and
Yeah.
that was huge. And so yeah, and so and then and so yeah, and so you know, just as long as you continue to work hard, and I mean, anything is possible.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like franchises that have grown out of the indie world. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is probably the biggest prime
Yep.
example. Indie comic becomes a huge hit. Yeah, but there's more and more. One of the things I'm kind of sad about with Hollywood and less so with television. Television still takes risks, but Hollywood's become like an IP factory. They're just mining IP all the time. Intellectual property, intellectual property. Oh, you want nostalgia? We'll go back to your childhood and make 50 Transformers movies for you. The problem with that, in my opinion, is they're not generating new IP for the next generation of kids. So there's going to be this vacuum that opens up when my kids grow up because there's been nothing generated for them. They're just watching what their parents have always watched. But there's only so many times they're going to be able to make the same type of movie over again. And you can't do it for 60 years. It's just not possible. So one of the things I think is eventually going to have to happen is bigger companies like Netflix or even all the other streamers are going to have to go search out these smaller IPs that are doing pretty well and say, or find something that's interesting and say, hey, you know, this would resonate with a bigger audience and we'll make it. And then they can create their own IPs for the future audiences, just like they did with Ninja Turtles. They went and found a property. It was an adult comic, but they saw some people saw something in it and said, we could probably make this for kids as well, you know, and then it worked. And I think that's what's going to happen is they're going to have to go find new stories, fresh stories. And I think the indie world is full of those right now. In fact, the indie comics are booming on places like Kickstarter, you know, Backer Kit, any all online comic sellers are selling lots of more indie comics. You just never see them in retail stores because there's never been like Diamond Comics or Diamond distributors. Indie comics creators could never get distribution at like mainstream comics, so nobody ever bought them and stocked their shelves with them. But if you go to Kickstarter, you'll see like at least a couple hundred comic book projects a month, and some of them are making upwards of $500,000 each month. And I know if you look at like Pat Shand is a writer who works for like Zenoscope and some other companies. And his own personal comic series have done extremely well. There's another group. There's an indie comic company called Bad Bug Media, and they release like 2 or 3 a month, 2 or 3 separate books a month, comic books, and they all make in the, you know, 30, 40, $50,000 range each month, and he's doing like 3 a month. So I mean, there's a lot of good creators, a lot of good ideas, and a lot of story content to be mined there. That's fresh, that's new, that will have lasting appeal. And that's kind of what I try to write in my comic book stuff. At least I try to write stuff that will have a lasting appeal. And so my dream is to maybe have somebody pick something of mine and make an animated series of it, or a live action series. That's always the goal, is to like try how to get something produced eventually someday.
Yeah, and yeah, and I mean, ultimately, you really only fail only when you stop putting in the effort. I mean, so yeah, as but just as long as you continue to work at it and and learn to adapt, you know. But yeah, I I can definitely see that happening, and yeah, and just imagine all these big name IPs. They weren't always big name IPs, like
Hmm.
such as like even with Terrifier,
Yeah.
Terrifier at one point I was not a bigger name horror IP, and then yeah, and then especially when Terrifier 2, and even last year, like when Terrifier 3 came out, like Terrifier 3 is that exploded at the box office, and
Yeah.
that beat Joker 2 at the box office,
Hmm.
and so yeah, and so there absolutely is an audience like for independent content, comic books, music, movies,
Yeah.
there is an audience, and it seems to me like that audience, like with like the indie crowd, it seems to me that it's bigger now than it ever has been.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, yeah, and there's a lot of small. Well, I wouldn't say horror movies are usually cheap. Terrifier is a prime example of something made inexpensively but does really well. But the escape room movies were also kind of like that. Had a bit bigger budget. I think they were around $9 million. The escape room movies, and they grossed over like $160 million. And you're like, holy crap, let's make more of these.
Right.
Um, the Purge movies are like that as well. How
Yep.
many more Purge movies are we going to have? But it's just a genre that cheap to make, but the concept is gripping, and you can just rinse and repeat as many times as you want, and it's still going to be entertaining. So if you can make them cheaply and still have people showing up in theaters, then I think Hollywood's always going to gravitate towards those type of films. And you see more horror movies now than you ever have as well. It's just that horror in general is an evergreen property. There's always a fan base for it. So
Oh, there's
that's, yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to try my hand at the cosmic horror stuff, because it's like, I like sci-fi, I like horror. Let me mash the two up and see how many sci-fi horror things I can do, but keep each story different from one another. In my Dark Forces of Nature book 2, I have a I have a horror one called Enter Valhalla, and it's just about Ragnar Lothbrok and some of the Viking warriors fighting on a hillside, and they look over and they see what they think is a blue ice giant, so they go follow it, and they follow it into a cave, which turns out to be a spaceship, and it's not an ice giant, it's an alien. So then they have to fight with these aliens that are actually trying to collect human specimens and put them in cryogenic sleep chambers, freeze them, and keep them for posterity as like their trophies or whatever. And they're like collectors, and so then the Vikings have to figure out how to escape and not get trapped by these alien creatures. And so I was like, let's have fun with these genres and stuff. Again, genre mashing, but also a little bit of horror, a little bit of sci-fi. So like all my, and then I'll pivot wildly, and I'll have a story about an AI that a professor created, and he has a new girlfriend, and the AI is getting jealous of the girlfriend, and so it starts doing things to try and kill her, and so it's like it's just like fun, very different topics, but just all kind of fun, and And again, I like to write those, and so I'll just continue to keep doing these fun books and fun stories. Just I entertain myself as much as I do other readers, so that's probably why I write all those stories.
Yeah, which and I mean it definitely does make sense, and yeah, and and just to add on to, just an IP factory, and I mean, I hear so often about how people complain about, oh, there's no original ideas. Actually, there are. It's just you
Hmm.
vote with your wallet.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and so with that said, like with all of your comic books and so on and so forth, is there currently like a Kickstarter for it now?
Oh, we just finished like a couple days ago. The one I was doing with the Ninja Turtles artist Ariel Medel. He uh, he created this kind of Dungeons and Dragons fantasy series called Dragon's Bane, and it's just about some adventures. It's about a dragon hunter, and Dragon's Bane is basically a disease in our series that if you get infected, it starts to turn your body into like scaly and rough like a dragon, you know. And so one of the heroes has that disease, and then it's just about them. Uh, it's a very simple setup to what might be a bigger story. We just wanted to test the waters and feel out if there was any interest for the book. But yeah, basically, it's about a woman being hired to track down these orcs that are going from village to village and just slaughtering everyone. And so she has to go. She gets paid to go stop them, basically. And she's kind of like a Red Sonja character. That just finished. There's still some late pledging going on. Kickstarter opened up a new feature that allows you to pledge late, meaning once the campaign's over, you can still go buy the book
Oh,
for an extended period of time. I don't know what the extended period of time is though, because it doesn't say in the like because you have to opt into it. It's like a new program. They just set it up last month, and so it's so new that I still don't know even how to use it properly. So, but currently we do have late pledging still going on. They haven't taken it down yet, so I don't know how long that will run. But yeah, it's called Dragon's Bane, and you can technically go to Kickstarter and still get your copy of it. That's the latest one that we've run. My next Kickstarter probably won't be until October. I'm going to do the second issue of The Profane, the vampire cop story. I ended up doing a novelization of it because I plotted out 5 issues for the comic, and I liked the story so much. I was like, I wonder if I could adapt this to a novel. And then I wrote it last year. I wrote the novel based on the comic scripts, and I published the novel, self-published it, and so it's out there. Um, if you want the full story, but originally it was a comic book series, so I'm going to continue that series. Then maybe early next year, March or April, I'm going to release my Alicia Carter and Robot Part 4, Issue 4. And that book always sells really well. So yeah, those are on the horizon. I try to keep them steady, but I don't want to make over $70,000 in one year because it bumps you into a different tax bracket, and then the amount of taxes you get taxed on are like between 40 and 46% of your total earnings, and it just wipes you out. So I try to stay under 70,000 just for that reason. So I only do about two to three projects a year. Uh, yeah,
makes sense. And I mean, ultimately, you got to do what you got to do.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. So yeah, and I mean, all that definitely sounds really exciting, and yeah, and yeah, and I definitely will be excited to, I definitely will be excited to check all of those out.
All right. Thank you.
Oh yeah, certainly. And so yeah, so yeah, so before we wrap things up, would there be anything that you would want the audience like to be aware of, like about all of your comics?
Yeah, if they want to check out the comics, you can look under my imprint. My comic book imprint is called Regolith Comics. And the website, of course, is just www.regolithcomics.com.
Okay.
And I also have like social media like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all that stuff. I started trying to figure out how TikTok works. My daughter's helping me set up TikToks and stuff. I'm not quite there yet, but we'll get it going.
Yeah, just gotta take it one step at a time, right?
That's right.
All right, cool. But yeah, I certainly greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here, and yeah, I definitely very much so appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, yeah, of course.